Okay, I'm gonna educate you people about this whole spinning Earth fallacy that you think, because you guys are just so retarded, and you guys need to know the truth. There's an excellent article that the Wild Heretic put out about the heliocentric theory is wrong. The spinning Earth spinning around the sun, is completely wrong. There's so much evidence, good evidence, that supports this view. I'm just gonna read it to you, okay? So just sit back down, relax, and just listen to me read this article to you, okay? There are 5 pieces of solid evidence that heliocentric theory is wrong that I know of. The first one requires a bit of visualization, but is very difficult to explain otherwise. 4 others are 99.99% certain, bordering on the ridiculous. You would literally have to make stuff up to try and counter them, and they have. So without further ado, let's begin. Exhibit A, the path of the sun. Observational fact. The sun in the sky during the summer in the northern hemisphere, above the Tropic of Cancer, travels in a southern arc across the sky, which is a west-west-south direction, until noon, and then west-west-north direction until midnight, as this illustration below shows. Sun is traveling in a southern arc. Okay? It's rising, and then it's slowly going south, and then it comes back north up again during the sunset. Heliocentric theory. The Earth spins in an anti-clockwise direction. This is their theory. If viewed looking down from the North Pole, it spins on its axis just over 360 degrees in 24 hours and travels around the sun in 1 year. Well, that's cut off. The window's cut off. Let me fix that. Hold on 1 second. Get a better shot of that. Okay, that's better. Turn off my camera. Okay. It tilts, so they say, 23.44 degrees on its axis, so that at the height of the summer solstice, one hemisphere will be nearer to the sun than the other, and in 6 months on the other side of the sun, this same hemisphere will be further away, winter solstice, as this diagram demonstrates. Okay, they got the diagram there. Yeah, it was a super close-up shot. So this is what they're saying. They're saying that the Earth is spinning. They're saying it's tilted, and then every year it goes around the sun. So to recap, the heliocentric theory states that the northern hemisphere above the Tropic of Cancer, which would be over here, in the summer solstice tilts toward the sun at 23.44 degrees, as this illustration below shows. Northern hemisphere summer solstice. Okay. So far, so good. The sun is seen to travel in the sky east to west because the Earth is so-called rotating in the opposite direction, west to east. Now in the above diagram image, any location in the northern hemisphere, NH, above the Tropic of Cancer, as it rotates anti-clockwise. At daybreak, the NH is rotating in a downwards direction, east-east-south, until noon, where it reverses and travels upward, east-east-north, until midnight. The sun is seen to travel in the sky in the opposite direction, which is west-west-north, until noon, and then west-west-south until midnight. This is a northern arc, as the flipped illustration below demonstrates. Okay. Are you with me so far? This is what they're saying about the heliocentric theory. As we can see, this is exactly opposite to how the sun is seen to traverse in the sky. No matter what the season, the sun in the northern hemisphere above the Tropic of Cancer never travels in a northern arc. Ever. It never travels in a northern arc. Not in winter, not in fall, spring, not in summer. So that right there tells you. I mean, this is just one. I mean, he's got a whole score of these proofs. So much for heliocentric theory. If it does not tilt, there's no way heliocentric theory can explain the seasons. This means that it is the movement of the sun which must create the seasons, making the rotation of the earth redundant, unless, of course, it is a mixture of both. It is much, much more likely the earth does not rotate at all, which is actually what science says. Especially since there is no observational evidence whatsoever for a rotating earth, which leads on to Exhibit B. Exhibit B. Where is the constant wind? The density of the earth has been calculated at 5,515 kilograms per cubic meter. Whether accurate or not is unknown. The density of air is 1.204 kilograms per cubic meter at room temperature, 4,580 times less dense than Earth. Okay, that's very important for you to understand, because if you believe the Earth is rotating, you have to conclude that the air is rotating at the same speed as the Earth. However, the density is so much less. The density of air is so much less than the density of Earth. A denser solid object does not carry a less dense gas along with it when it moves. This is self-evident, as it is the basis of aerodynamics, as shown in this video below. A moving solid object, 100 kilometers per hour car, leaves a gas air behind, creating a 100 kilometer per hour wind in the perceived opposite direction of the moving car. When the solid planes are more perpendicular, it will push gas, such as air, away from the solid object, such as a fan. The Earth, although a spinning squashed globe, would push a little air out into space due to its slight undulations, but by and large would be very aerodynamic, as this man spinning a basketball shows. A very aerodynamic globe. Heliocentric theory states that the Earth rotates at 1,675 kilometers per hour at the equator, 1,049 kilometers per hour in London, and 231 kilometers per hour in Alert, northern Canada. This rotation would cause winds of almost equal speeds on Earth's surface, constantly. The fastest wind speed known to man is an F5 incredible tornado with wind speeds of 420 to 511 kilometers per hour. The tornado in Oklahoma in 1999, which killed 38 people and destroyed 8,000 homes, traveled at 486 kilometers per hour, the devastation of which we can see below. There is nowhere on Earth that has a constant wind speed of between 1675 kilometers per hour and 231 kilometers per hour. Nowhere. If there were, nobody living below Greenland could venture outside. Do you understand that, people? Do you understand? Okay? Wind. If the Earth were spinning, because the atmosphere is so much less dense than the Earth, it would not be spinning along with the Earth. Okay? This is so simple for you to understand. We would all be living in underground caves. Sometimes there are days of no wind, sometimes a mild breeze. The wind travels in all kinds of directions, sometimes changing by the second. Clouds move with the wind and can travel in any direction, but mostly go from west to east. This contradicts heliocentric theory, as the Earth is supposed to rotate west to east, which would create winds going in the opposite direction, east to west. Oops. Another piece of self-evident incredulity. There's more. Are you listening, people? Exhibit C, hovering, flying, and falling. Even more obvious is the fact that the Earth does not rotate under hovering objects. A helicopter, which hovers above the ground at any height from 1 meter all the way up to its upper limit of around 8,000 meters, never experiences the ground traveling 231 kilometers per hour to 1675 kilometers per hour, west to east, or in any direction, in fact. Okay? It's very simple. Helicopters, whatever, if you jump up in the ground, you're not going to land in a different place because there's no spin to the Earth. Simple logic, guys. Same applies to those machines which traverse the sky, such as airplanes. The only differential between a one-way and a return flight is changes in wind speed and direction. Okay? If you took off from New York, you went to Los Angeles in a plane, theoretically, you'd get to Los Angeles a whole lot quicker than you were if you were to go the other way around. The rotation of the Earth has no effect on travel time of an aircraft. It is the headwinds and tailwinds that cause the change in travel times. A mere 65 miles per hour wind is more than enough to cause a difference in travel time of 5 hours when you are traveling long distances. See? All right, let's move on. Let's talk.
One more thing I also want to mention too. The analogy that they give, the heliocentric advocates give, is that imagine that if you're on a bus, or you're in a bus, or you're in a plane, or you're in a moving car, and you jump up, you're going to land in the same place. Well, that analogy is not correct, because the correct analogy would be being on top of that moving vehicle. Therefore, if you were on top of a moving car, if you were on top of a moving airplane, if you were on top of a bus, and you jumped up, you definitely would not land in the same place. So let's be real. Let's be real about that. That's what you're really comparing it to. You're comparing the spinning Earth. You're saying you're on a spinning Earth, which you aren't in the first place. You're actually in the Earth because it's concave. But the motion that you say is happening, that you say is all relative, is not correct. The analogy you give is not correct. You have to be putting yourself on that object, not in the moving object, on the object. Okay, let's continue.
Let's check a flight along the equator, just to be sure. Maldives to Singapore, and back fits the bill. Singapore Airlines has 2 flights come up. Maldives to Singapore, west to east. Takes 4 hours, 45 minutes for both flights. And Singapore to Maldives, east to west, takes 4 hours and 30 minutes, and 4 hours and 25 minutes respectively. The Earth is supposed to rotate at 1675 kilometers per hour west to east at these locations, which are 3,388 kilometers apart. A Boeing 777 travels at 885 kilometers per hour at 10,675 meters in altitude. Do I really need to do the math? No, you don't, wild heretic. Flying from Singapore to the Maldives would take about an hour, including takeoff and landing, if the Earth were rotating under the plane. Going the other way, it is worse, as the plane can only fly half as fast as the rotating Earth. So you would have to continue flying all the way around the globe, east to west, just to get back to Singapore. This is an obvious fallacy. So we have gone from 8,000 meters to 10,675 meter altitude, and still the Earth does not move under our feet. If we go any higher, there won't be many air molecules left to be magically velcroed to the solid Earth's surface by a mystical and yet unknown force, which there must be for a heliocentric theory to exist. But let's go higher anyway. As mentioned in my first post, on the mysterious disappearing stars at high altitude, amateurs can now send weather balloons up into space, into the stratosphere as high as 36,000 meters. At these heights, only about 1% of the air is left. But these few air molecules must also magically stick to the solid surface of the Earth. Amelia, are you listening? All these different densities and all somehow staying with the Earth. Interesting. Impossible. Look at the time these balloons are in the air and the difference in distance between landing and taking off. Here's the first one. Launched at 13:07:38. Hit the ground at 16:04:40. Highest altitude 29.7 kilometers. Distance from launch 108.4 kilometers. Launched in Maine would give a rotating Earth speed of 1,181 kilometers per hour at 45-degree latitude. That means the Earth should have moved 3,500 kilometers under the balloon, making it land in the middle of the USA. But it did not, did it? No. Second example is the website page, even worse. Okay. So when you take off in a balloon, when you launch a weather balloon, it lands virtually in the same place. It doesn't land far, far away. I'm still here. Are you listening? Of surface and all the other air densities on the way to the ground, and Felix himself being obviously heavier than air, all moved with the rotating Earth in tandem, by some magical, mystical force unknown to man. At what height would Felix have experienced the Earth rotating below him? 50 kilometers, 70, 100? The heliocentric advocates will have to make up a magic number. Why not? It's all fantasy after all. Let's continue. Exhibit D. Hardly any stellar parallax. Now this is kind of funny because heliocentric advocates tend to try to use parallax to prove that the Earth is rotating, but it's actually not. The stars revolve 360 degrees in 24 hours in an anti-clockwise fashion around the North Polar Star in the northern hemisphere, and clockwise around the Southern Star in the southern hemisphere. Photographs take photos with very long shutter speeds to show this effect. Okay, you all seen these time-lapsed photographs of the stars, the streaks. This, you may think, is a good case for a rotating Earth, but on its own, it's also a good case for a geocentric one. Geocentric means Earth is stationary, as it demonstrates that either the Earth is moving or the heavens are moving. However, after 6 months, those exact same stars are at the exact same location and can be seen with the naked eye, at which they have been 6 months previously. The annual change in the position of stars in the sky is called stellar parallax. You can demonstrate this lack of parallax by following this experiment devised by Samuel Rowbotham. Take 2 carefully bored metallic tubes, not less than 6 feet in length, and place them 1 yard asunder, 1 yard apart, on the opposite sides of a wooden frame. Okay? You point them up, you're looking at the star. The tubes are like telescopes, like vertical telescopes. You're just looking at the stars through the tubes. Or a solid block of wood, a stone. So adjust them that their centers or axes of vision shall be perfectly parallel to each other. Now direct to the plane of some notable fixed star, a few seconds previous to its meridian time. Let an observer be stationed at each tube, and the moment the star appears in the first tube, let a loud knock or other signal be given, to be repeated by the observer at the second tube when he first sees the same star. So it'll be like a knock knock. A distant period of time will elapse between the signals given. The signal will follow each other in a very rapid succession. Bam, bam, like that. But still, the time between is sufficient to show that the same star is not visible at the same moment by 2 parallel lines of sight, when only 1 yard asunder. A slight inclination of the second tube toward the first tube would be required for the star to be seen through both tubes at the same time. Let the tubes remain in their position for 6 months, at the end of which time the same observation or experiment will produce the same results. The star will be visible at the same meridian time, without the slightest alteration being required in the direction of the tubes, from which it is concluded that if the Earth had moved 1 single yard in an orbit through space, there would at least be observed the slightest inclination of the tube, which the difference in position of 1 yard had previously required. But as no such difference in the direction of the tube is required, the conclusion is unavoidable that in 6 months, the given meridian upon the Earth's surface does not move a single yard, and therefore the Earth has not the slightest degree of orbital motion. This is such a well-composed article by Wild Heretic. Kudos to him. Traditionally, stellar parallax has been notoriously difficult to measure with even the best of modern equipment. The angles involved in these calculations are very small and thus difficult to measure. The nearest star to the Sun, and thus the star with the largest parallax, Proxima Centauri, has a parallax of 0.7687 plus or minus 0.0003 arc seconds. There are 3,600 arc seconds in 1 degree, 180 of which cover the sky at night. No wonder we can't see any movement with the naked eye. Even so, movement for only a tiny fraction of the stars can be measured at all by modern equipment. Amelia, that's Hipparchus, primarily for obtaining parallaxes and proper motions of nearby stars, increasing the reach of the method tenfold. Even so, Hipparchus is only able to measure parallax angles for stars up to 1,600 light years away, a little more than 1% of the diameter of the Milky Way. There are an estimated 100 to 200 billion galaxies in the universe, so they say anyway, which is bunk, as there are no galaxies. I agree with them there. Each with up to 100 trillion stars. So being able to detect movement in 1% of the stars out of our galaxy is a minuscule amount. We also know about our space agency's weird and wonderful orbiting machines. So even this 1% is unlikely to be true. Well, I'm also doing This is a big problem for heliocentric theory, which states that every 24 hours the Earth rotates on its axis at 1675 kilometers per hour, revolving around the Sun at 107,000 kilometers per hour, which in turn moves around the center of the galaxy at 900,000 kilometers per hour, which moves in the universe at 2.16 million kilometers per hour. Apart from the atmosphere disappearing at these speeds, how is there no stellar parallax? Especially considering that all the other stars and galaxies are revolving around each other and the Earth as well. The sky must be a real mess, a right mess. Each new day must bring a brand new unique constellation in the sky at night, when some new star is getting nearer so they can be seen with the naked eye, and some traveling further away and disappearing, never to return for thousands or millions of years. Before we move on, this lack of stellar parallax is the reason why advocates of heliocentric theory give the unbelievably enormous distance the heavenly bodies must be. They must be that far away from the Earth. They can't measure it. The stars must be thousands and millions of light years away, with the Milky Way 100,000 light years across, one light year being 9.46 trillion kilometers, because there's no or little detectable stellar parallax. Otherwise, heliocentric theory would be definitely wrong. All right. So, stellar parallax, another reason why the Earth is not spinning. Exhibit E, scientific experiments. How do we know it is not the heavens or space which moves about us instead of the Earth, which causes both the rotation of the stars and any of their hard-to-detect parallax? We know now it is the former, thanks to an experiment in 1871 by astronomer Royal George Airy, which is this. If stellar parallax is too small to see with the naked eye, then why not artificially increase it? If the Earth rotates at the same speed constantly, then by slowing the light down, by filling the telescope with water, the angle of star movement would increase. If stellar parallax increased, then the telescope would have to be tilted more to see the same star and prove a rotating Earth once and for all. And guess what? As confirmed by others, the most careful measurements gave the same angle for a telescope with water as for one filled with air. This is called Airy's failure. It proved the rotation of the heavens, not the Earth, which moves stars. Airy's failure, look it up. I'm going to give you the link to this article. There's no reason for you guys to believe in a rotating Earth. The heliocentric advocates were now desperate. What was needed was another observable experiment to still offer the possibility of a rotating Earth. Enter Foucault's pendulum in 1885. This pendulum swings back and forth, each swing moving slightly to the right in the northern hemisphere and to the left in the southern hemisphere until, at the poles, one full circle is achieved in a 24-hour period. It doesn't move left or right at all at the equator. Interesting. Okay, there's a Foucault pendulum in California. There's an illustration of the pendulum moving. You see this blue line? That's the rotation circuit as it's swinging back and forth. It's actually kind of rotating slightly like that. As you have noticed, this is the same phenomenon as the stars rotating every 24 hours around the polar star, which was proved not to be caused by a rotating Earth thanks to George Airy. Unfortunately for the heliocentric supporters, Foucault's pendulum is also a problem. In 1954 and in 1959, Maurice Elias noticed that during a solar eclipse, which lasted 2.5 hours, the angle of the pendulum changed dramatically by 13.5 degrees. The whole angle shifted. This has been repeatedly observed with positive results on most of the subsequent eclipses, which obviously means that the pendulum isn't registering the Earth's rotation. Okay? The pendulum is not registering the Earth's rotation, but the motion of something else instead. With Airy's failure proving that the Earth does not spin, the heliocentric theorists needed to quickly show, with no further doubt, that the Earth rotated. Enter two staunch supporters of heliocentricity, Albert Michelson and Edward Morley, who, in 1887, set up a device which split up light, one beam in the direction of the Earth's supposed rotation, and one at right angles. The two light beams, they recombined and hit a photographic plate. Okay, here's their illustration here, okay? You have the light source, and you have this mirror that's splitting up the beams, okay? One of the beams is going straight through it, and one is going at a right angle. So you have these mirrors that are reflecting back the beams, back to the central mirror, and then they're detecting them here. So they're saying that these two beams, theoretically, if the Earth were rotating, would hit the detector at different time intervals. One would get here quicker than the other, but that's not what they found. The two light beams then recombine and hit a photographic plate. The difference is speed of the two beams would create an interference pattern. They expected to measure a speed of 30 kilometers per second, as that was the speed of the Earth's supposed rotation, but instead registered a variable difference between 1 and 10 kilometers per second each time the experiment was repeated. They called this a null result. This proves that the Earth is not rotating, and at the same time proved the existence of the ether. Now, what they did, they concluded that there is no ether and the Earth is rotating, but it's just a confirmation bias based on a presuppositional theory assumption that the Earth is rotating. Do you understand that? You can go either way, you can say, but it makes much more sense if you understand there's no rotation to the Earth whatsoever, because there is an ether. It didn't stop there. George Sagnac and Henry Gale conducted similar experiments, but on a rotating platform, which again demonstrated the existence of the ether. Already proved by default in 1871 and 1885 by combining the results from George Airy and Foucault's pendulum, and also in 1887 by the Michelson-Morley experiment. How do you think the advocates of heliocentric theory responded? Why, they made something up, of course. What else could they do but invent another wild theory to play down these experimental results and lead us further into the cesspit of fallacy? Enter showbiz academic of the 20th century, Einstein and the special theory of relativity. Enter the clowns. Special theory of relativity was invented to make sure all these experiments still gave heliocentric theory a chance of being correct. It needed objects to shrink to a specific size in direct proportion to its speed. These objects weren't measured. The concept had never been observed at all. It was metaphysical only, but it had to be correct. Otherwise, the unthinkable would be true. The rescue operation was performed by means of a purely metaphysical concept lifted directly from Professors Fitzgerald and Lawrence, who had also been trying to explain the results of the Michelson-Morley experiment, and renamed by him the special theory of relativity. What was suggested was that if the dimensions of an object in motion were assumed to shrink exactly in proportion to the speed at which it was traveling by exactly the necessary amount, mathematical calculations could be made to show that the Earth was in motion after all. No one has ever seen an object shrink as a result of being in motion, and indeed, one of the world's leading authorities on relativity, Dr. Herbert Dingleberry, was later to dismiss the theory of relativity as metaphysical nonsense. Well, good for you, Dingle. With no basis on what could be observed. Making up a new branch of mathematics to explain the results of experiments that disagrees with your worldview does not a proof make, as J.J. Thomson once said. We have Einstein's space, de Sitter space, expanding universes, contracting universes, vibrating universes, mysterious universes. In fact, the pure mathematician may create universes just by writing down an equation. And indeed, if he is an individualist, he can have a universe of his very, very own. However, when you make stuff up, not based on anything in the real world, it is bound to run into trouble. There's a link there that talks about Galileo, how he was wrong. Ironically, when special relativity failed due to its internal contradictions, Einstein had to invent general relativity to shore up the facade, and in the process, he had to take back the very two foundations he had discarded in special relativity, namely A, that nothing can exceed the space of light, and B, the existence of the ether. Oh, you accepted it back, Albert. Good for you, good boy. In the end, Einstein's theories were a mass of contradictions, which are covered over by obtuse mathematical equations. Despite this nonsense, the heliocentric, quote, authorities, end quote, pushed it through with all their media power and academic might, so that once this new mathematics was firmly established, they had carte blanche to sneak in other bad science when experimental observations went against them, like black holes, dark matter, wormholes, and other such unobservable and unverifiable nonsense. The worst offense, though, was trying to tie in the Coriolis effect of a rotating Earth with observable atmospheric phenomena. The Coriolis effect is an optical illusion whereby an object traveling in a straight line, is seen to be moving in a curved line instead because the observer is on a rotating platform. See, top view, you're the observer here. If you're going to be watching that object move in a straight line as you're rotating, it's going to look like the object is curving, but it's not. It's just an optical illusion. They say it is This effect, which causes moving objects to be deflected in a clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere and an anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere. An example of which are large cyclones. This is obviously false. The Coriolis effect is not a force. It is an optical illusion. It cannot be caused. It cannot cause objects to be deflected. Their trajectories remain the same, which is straight. Cyclones do not travel in straight lines, but just appear to be curved because we are on the surface of a rotating sphere. End quote. Their size ranges from under 222 kilometers to over 888 kilometers, making their curves far too tight and localized. Plus, they are very high altitude images looking down on cyclones from above. Is the camera rotating with the Earth to get the curved perspective? How can a cyclone twisting on itself be a straight line? Is this image even real? And what about...
So you understand that now. The curvature of that cyclone would have to encompass the entire curvature of the so-called spinning Earth. So that Coriolis effect theory about the spinning Earth is completely wrong.
Smaller vortex phenomena like tornadoes, which average only 150 meters across. Where is the Coriolis effect now? If you wish to study further the fallacy of linking the Coriolis effect with atmospheric phenomena, the Miles Mathis work is a must. Okay, conclusion. So we have proved that the Earth does not tilt, the Earth does not rotate, the sun moves, not the Earth, the heavens move, not the Earth, which means that space, or the ether, moves, not the Earth. Space moves in a circular motion and is probably a vortex. Heliocentricity is now dead. The debate is over. However, it is only fair to list the arguments for. Okay, he goes into the arguments for on the next part 2. That's part 1. It's over. Okay.
So there you have it. That's Wild Heretic's article. You can go visit my link. I'll put it in the bottom of the description box, wildheretic.com. And he also goes into other articles about the concavity of the Earth. You are living on the inside surface of the Earth. And he corroborates my statement that there is a glass sky at 100 kilometers. This is all tangible evidence, guys. This is the real world. It's about time y'all woke up. Thank you for your time.